a lot of people had questions about like, what do you internally do to upgrade things? So we probably won't make this necessarily a recurring piece, but when it's needed, we wanted to share some of the things behind the curtain. Chris, I didn't make any fancy animations. Do you want to talk a little bit about these? I mean, SOAR is one of those things to the enterprise. That's a whole separate product. I don't think most of the audience even
Yeah.
knows internally we have a SOAR that we build, maintain, and deliver for them. Do you want to give a little bit more insight onto that and how we've
Yeah.
adjusted?
Yeah. So the idea behind SOAR is like, how do you kick off automations? How do you respond? How do you usually you have multiple different security tools. How do you orchestrate the stuff that happens between them? Because we are effectively doing all of that for folks and we are managing all of that, we have had to set up a lot of this stuff ourselves and figure out how do we automate stuff and how do we respond. And so I gave a couple examples here of some of the stuff that we've added. In this case, we talk about suppressions. So in order for us to not have to deal with a lot of false positives and not send those false positives to our customers, we have to figure out how to suppress stuff. Like there are some times where there are just a lot of false positives. It could be from something like a defender, or it could be from something where we feel that it is potentially not common, but for a customer or a user, it is a common thing, right? Maybe it's logging in from a Russia or a Nigeria or any place like that, right? We use automations to do a bunch of stuff. Like sometimes we want to collect additional files or run additional things when something happens. So the SOAR engine allows us to do that. And then it allows us to respond by isolating hosts when we detect malicious activity. So that's just kind of one way that we use some automation and stuff internally to be able to manage and run a system that is looking for and tracking events across the multiple millions of endpoints. So one of the kind of extensions of that is something that we've started to do recently, which is collecting browser history files. So we are always trying to figure out, without putting in a ton of effort, because we don't have the effort to go full incident response and forensics and tear down everything. But we do try to figure out, hey, somebody got malware, where did it come from? So that we can try to block it for other people and prevent additional infections. So one of the things that we are looking at is can we collect the browser history files to see what URLs a user recently visited, because they may have downloaded something that was part of a phishing campaign or something and is now malware on their machine. So where did it come from? Um, and that allows us to do some additional investigations and stuff there. And then finally, some of the SOC improvements we've been doing recently are better tracking of metrics and KPIs. So we've been really trying to hone in on what's the value that the SOC is bringing, and how do we measure that, both internally so we can continue to improve, but how do we then take those numbers and give them to folks externally to show just how good we are doing. And this is a thing that I know Kyle has talked about at different trade shows, but along the lines of how do you gauge, is this SOC as good as that SOC, as good as this other SOC? Well, there's actual numbers that you can start to look at and compare. So, we're spending a lot of effort there to try and bring in that data and make it so that we can understand how we're performing, and so that we can help you understand how we are better than other SOCs.